Reports are in that the Brandon Tanev deal is done. Plus, what is a move from the Seattle Kraken that I absolutely don't want to see? That's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Happy trade deadline, I suppose. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Want to tell you that today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So at the time that I'm recording this, our co-host on Thursdays, Zaiem is probably already at Climate Pledge Arena getting ready to hear from Ron Francis, as I'm about 20 minutes, now 19, away from the trade deadline. I'm here on the East Coast, Zaiem out in the Pacific Northwest. So we're tag teaming the content for you. Zaiem will have the quick updates after the trade deadline passes. But it's another farewell. Turbo, we understand, is headed to Winnipeg. The Seattle Kraken are set to get a second-round pick in the 2027 NHL draft. So we knew this was coming. We've talked about it on the last handful of episodes. And so again, Zaiem will have a little bit more. If you are not already subscribed to YouTube, go ahead and do that. We'll also have some of the updates on social media, and I will put together an audio package for our audio only listeners. The Seattle Kraken, we've seen that they've made some moves to bring in some young talent. Last night, we did see Mikey Simon get a goal for the Seattle Kraken. They ultimately, though, fell to the Nashville Predators. But Isiman was on a line with Ben Myers and Jacob Melanson. And on this episode, you'll hear clips from Zaiem and I talking about with Tanev presumably gone at the time that we recorded, and Yanni Gourde gone, Oliver Bjorkstrand gone. Who would we see come up from Coachella Valley? We also talk a little bit about Ty Cartier. We got some of the answers there, but the conversation which you're about to hear is the conversation that I absolutely don't want to hear today regarding the trade deadline. As of yet, we haven't heard any moves or murmurs. And that is, I do not want to see Philipp Grubauer just moved, whether paper or otherwise, to the American Hockey League and the Coachella Valley Firebirds. So Zaiem and I discussed that and more on today's episode. But again, wanted to hop on, introduce what you're about to hear. You'll hear Zaiem and I talking about Philipp Grubauer, about some prospects coming up, and then ultimately what these moves mean at the deadline for the Seattle Kraken. Are we really not rebuilding? You'll hear Zaiem and I what we have to say. But first up is our conversation regarding Philipp Grubauer. Enjoy. Philipp Grubauer is a player that returned from his AHL stint on his bobblehead day. Did not play on his bobblehead day, but was officially returned to the National Hockey League. But Zaiem, why is he on your list of potential moves that we could see truly within the next less than maybe 48 hours? Yeah.
So if the Kraken want the option of having Philipp Grubauer available to the Firebirds for their playoff run, he does need to be on the Coachella Valley roster by the trade deadline. This came from Emerald City Hockey, so I want to credit them for that piece of information. And so what might happen is you will see Philipp Grubauer has been sent down to the Coachella Valley Firebirds. And what that really means is probably nothing. That he'll be recalled back up by the next game. which would be Saturday morning in Philadelphia. And then that way, when the Firebirds are in the playoffs and the Kraken are not, then if they want to start Grubauer, if they want to have it available as a backup, if there's an injury, they have that as an option that they can choose to exercise that they want. But the key thing is, when you see Philipp Grubauer has been sent down to the Coachella Valley Firebirds, you're like, what? That's weird. He just came back up. Well, that's almost certainly what's happening here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I am just like, why are we even doing this? Why are we doing this? Like, I get it. Like, yes, I get it. Everything that you said, everything that Emerald City Hockey laid out makes sense. And we've seen this before, right? With Seattle Kraken players. We've totally seen this before. Putting that aside, putting aside the process, understand the process completely. Got it. Check. Cool. Great. Excellent. Awesome. Yay. Whatever. What I'm having a difficult time wrapping my mind around is that we sent a Vezina finalist through waivers to the AHL to get him a reset. We now brought that goalie who, before he was sent down, while he was sent down, and after he returned, told us, and we've talked, you and I had this conversation, Zaiem, where you broke down the numbers. I talked about what I was hearing around the Kraken circuit. We said Philipp Grubauer plays better when he has consecutive repetitions. So for me, putting aside that he can be eligible, putting aside that this is an AHL team that is damn near desperate, right, for an actual Calder Game 7 win and a championship, this to me spells the ultimate nonsensical vote, a lack of a vote for or against. What am I trying to say? What is the actual term? It is a vote of a lack of confidence in Philipp Grubauer to send him to the AHL just for the playoffs. Because for me, if you're not going to give him starts, knowing that Joey Daccord has been less than the sharpest version of himself, then why are we belaboring what has to be the gnarliest breakup of Philipp Grubauer's professional career? Why? Like, just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's be done with it. I mean, it's like, sending a breakup text message and then an edible arrangement the next day. Like, I just am so, on behalf of Philipp Grubauer, I don't understand why he would want this to drag out. On behalf of the Seattle Kraken, it's like it feels to me like you're trying to be the nice guy, but in doing that, you're doing all of the wrong things. And you will be remembered by Carrie Bradshaw as the guy who broke up with her on a Post-it note. That's how it feels to me. Like, I just want it to be done. If you're not going to give him starts in the NHL, just be done with it. We don't need to, don't let the AHL do what they got to do. Not to mention small sample size. For math reasons, I will mention that. Small sample size, 7 games. But in his 7 games, his numbers did not really improve from his NHL numbers, and they're not even the best of any of our AHL goaltenders that we saw this season for the Firebirds. So for me, I'm just like, why are we doing this? Why do we need this? Who asked for this? Who wants this? And I guess the only thing that makes sense is that the Firebirds just really want to win a championship. And I wish I had the confidence enough to say that, yes, Philipp Grubauer, with all of his NHL experience, will absolutely get them the Calder win. Because we saw Drieger down there as well. Now, granted, he was there with Joey Dax, right, for a little bit, and didn't really get starts either. So like, what? I don't know. Explain this to me, Zaiem, because like I said, I'm getting very Sex in the City, bad bro vibes from this whole scenario, from a relationship perspective, not from a logical hockey perspective, but from a what this means in the now and in the future for the relationship between Philipp Grubauer and the Seattle Kraken.
I don't know. I mean, I think that this is just the Kraken one leaves himself an option, and maybe they've talked to Philipp Grubauer. It seemed likely that they would, to see what he wants, and if he wants to stay up the NHL, or if he wants more practice down in the AHL to get more reps, because he did talk about how it was good to just get games, and he's kind of hard to read because he's just kind of jovial, which is a really weird thing to say about a German. But but I think ultimately, I don't think the Kraken are thinking too deeply about this. They say, okay, if we file this paperwork, then we have, if we need to break glass in case of emergency, we have Philipp Grubauer if we need him. Or if they're like, we really want to win a Calder Cup, and we don't think that Stezka and Coco have the playoff experience, and haven't been there in the big games, and we really want that cup, getting so close the last 2 years, losing in Game 7 to the same stupid team, and then
freaking Hershey.
If it's Hershey and Coachella again in the final, then
all right,
maybe you want the guy who took Game 7 against Dallas and won Game 7 against Colorado. You don't have to. You are not required to use him. You don't have to dress him, a certain number of playoff games. But if you need to break glass in case of emergency, if you really just want the guy who's an NHL, has been in big NHL moments, Philipp Grubauer is the only person available in Coachella Valley. And the only way you do that is if you make this weird paper transaction between now and the trade deadline. And I think that's what the Kraken are thinking. It's like, we make this transaction and then we'll figure it out later. But if you don't make the transaction, then you don't have that option when you're trying to figure out later. And I guess then that's it.
It just seems like such a, it's not even a white flag. It's just, like I said, it's a weird Post-it note breakup with the promise of a super awkward edible arrangement sent to like my cubicle the next day. Like this
relationship is already doomed.
Yeah.
You're fighting all the time. Everyone knows that the breakup is happening this summer, and it's just like you're not happy anymore. You're taking
St. Patrick's Day, like we heard in
right.
John Mayer, right? Just till St. Patrick's Day.
So we all know, like, Philipp Grubauer is not going to be on this team next year. He's going to be. So it's like, how are you going to write out these last few months? And so the breakup it's already in place. It was in place when they sent him down on waivers. That was it. That was the beginning of the end. So now what we do after this point, it's like, the relationship is doomed. So like, who really cares? And if let's just do whatever Grubauer, if whatever he wants, if he wants to go down to Coachella Valley and do a playoff run, which would be my guess, is that he just wants to play hockey, especially after not playing hockey so much this year, being on the bench, would probably be my guess, is like, leave me at least available as an option in Coachella Valley. Sounds like it seems like they've kind of been, maybe talking to him a little bit. At least that's my reading is treated with his responses.
I guess we'll have to see. I'm just like, come on, let's just end this. Clearly I said what I said, lose my number kind of person. So like, this is just, I don't know. It's wild. I don't like it. I understand where you're coming from. I guess we'll see how it plays out. It does spell major questions though, as we're getting all of these reports. Still nothing official. Last I checked, from the Seattle Kraken. Probably won't get it before we wrap here. But and I mean, we're not going to get it. It's not even 3 o'clock Pacific time at the time we're recording. So yeah, we're not going to get it for a little bit here probably. Um, and maybe there's other things in the works, but ending our conversation today, in all of the 87 segments that we just recorded, I think ending talking about goaltending is critical. We talked about, if this goes the way we've heard it's going to go, there's money in the bank. There are draft picks to play with. Our prospects stay intact. So the moves that happen this offseason with respect to goaltending seem huge and will really tell us if we're going to be in the same book, on the same page, on like, where are we? Are we aligned yet? Or is there still work to do? I'm not sure. As of right now, everything that we're hearing, including us saying that we both agree that it's over. The German gentleman is moving on one way or another. Now what's available? Because you can't just have Joey Decord, um, you know, and then, is Joey truly the number one for this team? I think there's a world in which he becomes a bridge. I think that we're living in it right now, right? And for the most part, he's done what he needs to do. I don't think the team has done any favors by our goaltending. But that's another big thing here, Zaiem, is what is goaltending going to look like? What is even the market right now for an NHL ready goaltender?
Yeah, I'll be curious to see. I will say I think Joey Decord has been, and the numbers back this up.
Okay.
Joey Decord has been borderline elite based on the numbers, and the defense in front of him has just not been good, which aligns with what we're seeing. I think he's not old, so I think the Kraken feel pretty good about their starting goaltending situation. I think you could do much worse than Joey Decord as your going forward, but you can't, at least so far this year, they can't do a whole lot better.
Yeah.
If the Kraken had more wins, I think he would be in the Vezina conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Like he has been, he's been the best player on the team this year.
Oh, so, not even a question.
So it's like, they're in the market for a backup to back up Joey Decord and who that is. But at least now you don't have to do this thing where it's like, all right, we have two starters at starting salary with Grubauer and Decord. You'll have somebody else, or maybe Stezga is ready for a call up, or maybe Coco. But I feel like backup goaltender is not a super huge. I mean, it's important, but at least like goaltending, they have kind of figured out with Decord. It sure seems like the guy.
Today's episode of Locked on Kraken, as I mentioned at the top of the show, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. We know that the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can do that right there on the FanDuel page. You can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the National Basketball Association. All right, Kraken fans, you heard what I had to say about Philipp Grubauer. I just think it's a waste. Yes, I did liken my thoughts and feelings to a long Sex in the City storyline. I kind of went all over the place with that. And the irony of that is when we recorded this ahead of Thursday's episode, today being Friday, I actually was watching, I think it was the Sex in the City movie #2. That's the one with the wedding, right? I don't know. Who knows? Either way, here is the conversation Zaiem and I talking about with the forwards moved. At the time of the recording officially, it was Yanni Gourde and Oliver Bjorkstrand. And now that we know Brandon Tanev is expected to be moved, not officially official, we haven't gotten word from the Seattle Kraken yet. But again, we all kind of knew Brandon Tanev was a part of the conversation. Who are the players that we're going to see? Some of you, of course, will already know this because we've seen the Nashville game, but I do think it's still an interesting conversation because we talk about Ty Cartier. So while I don't want to see Philipp Grubauer in the AHL, I wouldn't mind seeing some more AHL talent in the NHL. This is just what this team is going to have to do to ride out the rest of the season. Enjoy the conversation with Zaiem and I from the other day. This was the same day that the news broke about Oliver Bjorkstrand and Yanni Gourde, but I like this part of the conversation and it didn't make yesterday's episode. Now, I suppose we can talk about you have no Yanni Gourde. So it was Ben Myers, right, was the healthy scratch for Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We know that Ty Cartier is on a conditioning loan, scored 2 goals, a brace, as some may say, in Coachella Valley's win also on Tuesday night that propelled them to top in their division in the AHL, where maybe Philipp Grubauer will go later after his breakup. You know, what are there logical steps to how the Seattle Kraken well, they'll have Essiman, right? But how do the Seattle Kraken navigate with Coachella Valley given this news and that you have Yanni Gourde and Oliver Bjorkstrand out of the lineup?
It's a great question. I don't know what the organization's priorities are versus like balancing development and NHL experience versus having the players down in Coachella Valley if they do want to make a run. I'm not down in Coachella Valley. I'm not around those players, that team, so I don't know what the sense is exactly. But my guess is that they're probably pretty thirsty for trying to win a Calder Cup after the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So, what this does for the roster, so there's no Gourde and no Bjorkstrand, and I'm guessing Tanev, if he's not traded by tomorrow, he's going to be held out for trade-related reasons because they just don't want him to get hurt. So now you're down 3 forwards. Well, watch the transaction wire to see who gets called up from Coachella Valley.
Yeah, we're gonna have to keep all the tabs open.
Yeah,
until Friday. I think it's a good question. I think we really don't know what that balance is because it seems like some of that's been happening on the fly with this team. We've talked about the resets. Andre Burakovsky, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Ty Cartier, infamously Shane Wright, who's been on quite the tear, scored another power play goal. I know that's your guy. I tried so hard to figure out how to fit in Shane Wright into this lineup, and I was sad yesterday, but also now glad I didn't because there's no way we were going to get to it 3 hours later. I don't know. There's been a little bit of that happening already at the NHL level. So now what the balance is, again, Essiman is going to come in. Ben Myers, Stevens is another player who we've seen come up. I think Ty Cartier, I liked what Dan Bilesma said. And we had one of our insiders that actually is still stock up on Ty Cartier because if the conditioning loan and his reset gives him some of that grit to his game back, that's exactly what we need. And now that there's no Yanni Gourde, I mean, there hasn't been for a little while because of his injury since January 2nd, but there is no Yanni Gourde to fall back on. Ty Cartier has to lean into that part of his game if he is going to continue on this Seattle Kraken roster.
Yeah. He's been kind of disappointing, I think, this year. So this is, he's got a great shot, but just for a variety of reasons, isn't able to create the shot and isn't really the scorer that maybe. I thought we'd get a little bit more out of him in that way. But if he can't do that, then at least bring this, the sauce, bring some grit, bring the sandpaper.
Yep. Have to.
Yeah, sauce is different than sandpaper and grit.
I'll have a set of sauce and sandpaper, please. Maybe they're the same. Who knows? I thought it was interesting. I was listening to Emma and Ann Kimmel, the two co-hosts there the other day, and there was a question. I guess that maybe one of their listeners was asking, like, has this team given up? No, excuse me. The way it went is that the front office has been asking players, "Hey, do you still believe in this team?" As we approach the trade deadline, has been asking, "Hey, do you still believe in this team?" And I guess depending on the answer, that has been indicative of how this team wants to move at the trade deadline. And it got me wondering, Zaim, and I did ask this question on one of our recent episodes, but what would Seattle Kraken players say if they were asked that same question? Like, do you believe in the vision of this team right now? I added, and are you committed to seeing that through? Because sometimes it feels like even those that maybe do believe in the vision, they're just a little gun shy when it comes to doing what it truly takes in the here and now to, on a consistent basis, execute the game plan to realize that vision.
That's a really interesting question, and I'm just going through my head, and I'm kind of categorizing who I think the players who are happier with the organization than the others. We talked about Adam Larson and how the Kraken said, "Hey, lose our number with trades," but
Yep.
that might also be because Adam Larson has a full no trade clause, and he
Yep.
may have told the Kraken, "You know what? I'm not interested in moving anywhere." And if that's the case, then the Kraken don't need to take phone calls.
Yep.
So, Jordan Eberle last year at the trade deadline, he signed a contract extension instead of getting traded. Yeah, that's a big sign there. I think Shane Wright seems happy. My sense is that Brandon Tanev has not been, and I don't think Burakovsky has been terribly happy.
Agreed.
Schwartz seems okay. Montour seems okay. Stevenson, who knows? You just go down the list. I mean, anytime you finish in the bottom four, I'm sure a lot of players are like, I would like to go someplace else. On the other hand, as an organization, the Kraken are great. The facilities are great. The coaches are great. They treat people really well. It's a first class organization, probably the most first class in the entire NHL. So I don't know how much that weighs in versus winning. And then there's no state income tax here. So for people, that matters a lot. The players have like the 10-team no trade clauses, and they're like all the Canadian teams and California teams. It's just like the 10 highest tax rates. And that's the thing that some players maximize for. Yeah. So I think it's a mix, but other than the on ice product, which obviously hasn't been good, the Kraken are really kind of a great organization. And that definitely seems to matter for people like Eberle and I guess Larson as well.
I would agree. And, only time will tell. I think it was an interesting hypothetical, or it wasn't, at least in Nashville, it wasn't a hypothetical. If I understood what Ann and Emma were talking about, this is a real conversation. And I think it also goes to some of what we've heard Ron Francis do at times. I think mostly of Mark Giordano, even to some extent Will Borgen. It's like, hey, this is the reality of the team right now. If this is where you want to be and it's good for what you want, where you want your career path to go, hey, let's figure it out. But if not, then let's have a conversation. And I think that I asked Ron Francis straight up, that sounds like that was similar to the conversation he had with Will Borgen, similar to the conversation that we heard him talk about with Mark Giordano. And maybe that was the case with some of the other players. Yanni Gourde, I think for sure. Bjorkstrand, I'd be curious to hear from Ron Francis what that conversation was like. But I agree with you. It's likely going to be the conversation, or has been the conversation, with Tanev as well. Well, I think we've done just about all we can do when it comes to this
brief, short episode where nothing happened.
Super short. Yeah. Like, ooh, snooze fest. Yeah. We've done about all we can do with the news as it came in real time. This is a move that is going to shake things up for the Seattle Kraken in the immediate, intermediate, and long term. The questions I think that we raised on this podcast remain. Is this organization prepared and ready to communicate effectively how to utilize these moves to get to where the team wants to be? And goaltending comes up, defense comes up, how we utilize our prospects comes up. So we're going to have plenty to talk about in the coming days once we officially get on the other side of the trade deadline and then all throughout the offseason. But Zaiem, we are so grateful and thankful that you are back. We know that you stepped aside to, well, I'll let you tell your news when you're ready, but you stepped aside to do some other things. And it's a perfect time to really get into the knit and grit of all things Seattle hockey. Before we let you go, let us know what you and your crew has cooking over at Davy Jones' locker room.
Yeah, so right now we're covering the trade deadline. There's a lot going on there, obviously. And we have that's really most of it, because that is all we're doing. But we cover every game. We cover both pre and post game write-ups, and we have great analysis coming in from Allison Ballard. She's doing our social media now. She's also writing for the Associated Press, which is super cool. And
So awesome.
So yeah, just if you want a breakdown of what's going on, just go to Davy Jones' locker room after listening to this not brief episode of Locked On Kraken.
Indeed. It definitely will be cut up into different pieces. So we might let the whole thing, just let that thing fly, as they say in basketball, for our insiders. Come along this fantastic journey with us. But breaking news, we broke it right here with you on Locked On Kraken. Well, Kraken fans, I hope you are enjoying having Zaiem back on the show as much as I am. Again, I told you it's about now 12 minutes away from the trade deadline at the time that I'm just recording this intro and whatnot. Zaiem is at Climate Pledge Arena. Of course, you can always follow Davy Jones' locker room, and Zaiem will be doing some video shorts for us from that press conference. As for me, I will give you a little bit more of a little bit more of a comprehensive update once all of the news comes in. Everything is official. We'll have the clips from Ron Francis in addition to Zaiem's summary. But for now, I am going to bid you adieu. I am in Raleigh, North Carolina, because the PWHL Takeover Tour is not but 40 minutes from my college town. And I wasn't going to miss the opportunity to finally see women's hockey in North Carolina. So I know that there is a lot going on in the hockey world, and it's an exciting time. It's also a heartbreaking time. I know that those who were watching yesterday's episode, the premiere live on YouTube, you saw me commenting in real time. I still don't think that I've processed fully losing Oliver Bjorkstrand, Yanni Gourde, and now Brandon Tanev. The Bjorkstrand one for me is tough. We love you, 22. Number 22, that's my number. I love Oliver Bjorkstrand's game. And I know that when that rumor first came to my attention, we talked about it on the show. I knew that was going to be a hard one. I had a visceral reaction to it, and I understood it. So I'm eager to hear what Zaiem thinks about Ron Francis's remarks. And again, I'll give you a more comprehensive angle from my perspective over the weekend. And of course, we'll break everything down for Monday's episode. Until then, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. We still have Kraken hockey. They're going to be taking on Philadelphia and Washington. So in the comprehensive trade update that I provide, I'll also get you ready for those games. Let's just take a deep sigh. It's okay. It's you don't need me to tell you this, but I will if you need me to tell you this. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be excited. It's okay to be confused. It's okay to have all of the feelings that you might feel as a Kraken fan right now. And we're going to navigate through them all. This is an organization that I think really needs to figure out its pathway, as you heard Zaiem and I talk about on this episode, on yesterday's episode, as I've been talking about the last handful of weeks. And this is the tough part of that. But we always hold fast and we stay true. Of course, a reminder to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and let's go Kraken. We've got some games over the weekend. I'm excited to see how some of the young talent is going to just cut their teeth in the NHL, and of course, how this team rallies from what is a very tough trade deadline on multiple levels. But we'll have it all here for you on Locked on Kraken. Thanks so much for those who are subscribed. If you're not subscribed, please do subscribe, like, share, and comment. We really want to continue to grow this community, and that starts with you all. So until the next episode, peace out, everybody. For those who are women's hockey fans, make sure you listen to the Locked on NHL Women's Hockey Report, because we will be boots on the ground right here in Raleigh, North Carolina. That's it for me for today. As I said, you'll hear more from Zaiem, and we thank you as always. Subscribe. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out. Let's go Kraken.